Hi, Jeff. Thank you so much for being with us today. Today, I wanted to talk about all things HR, TA, and tech that's happening within our sector. I know it's a
Sure.
huge topic, but who better to tell me all about it than you? So a quick introduction on me. I'm Bhumi, founder and CEO at Interim Market, the contingent workforce solution. And Jeff here has been my mentor. And am I allowed to say that? But
Yeah, sure you are. Why not?
and has really, really helped me advise on some early days of our startups and also ongoing as and when required with regards to some of our strategic thinking behind the product and the solution. So Jeff, here to you, please, would you mind giving a quick introduction so our viewers and listeners know who you are?
Yeah, no, happy to, Bhumi. Thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Jeff Wellstead. I've got about 30 years experience, which seems really painful to say, in human resource leadership. First half of my career in Manhattan with mostly major multinational investment banks, consulting firms, technology companies, and a little bit of pharma. And then going back for the last 15 years over here in the UK and globally working with hyper growth tech companies and supporting their scale up. Typically, and all of the different kind of people issues that come with that.
And that's lots of people issues to come with that, just to add.
Yeah, it is a non-trivial exercise, let's put it that way, without question.
Absolutely. So Jeff, looking at your experience, and this is why I said you're one of the best people to talk about these topics, is because you've touched talent acquisition teams in the old days that were recruitment teams sitting within HR function. And you've also, worked with the new structure of the TA model. So what do you feel is the state of HR, talent acquisition, and technology within the sector?
It's a big old question, isn't it? I hope I characterize this accurately, but more importantly, usefully. And I tend to kind of cast a somewhat critical eye, not a negative eye, but a critical eye on the field. Look, I think I've done a fair amount of work sort of in the digital transformation space for HR. And let's face it, I think recruitment and talent acquisition has always ever been sort of at the pointy end of the spear and the bit that frankly people look to most. Next, of course, being very much HR, information, kind of database systems of record and things of that nature. But it's really been, I think, in the TA space, in the recruitment space, that the technology has really exploded. And when I say exploded, typical of technology, in terms of its sort of Cambrian kind of explosion of ideas and so forth, oftentimes what will happen is you'll get a lot of ex-recruiters or technicians and business people or engineers kind of throwing their idea of what they think needs solving for into a pile of code. And then basically hoping for the best. So this is that notion of do I invent it first because people frankly don't even know what it is great looks like. So I'm just going to go ahead and build something that's conceptual, or do I go and ask people what they think they need and try to understand the pain that people and organizations are suffering from in terms of the recruitment process, and importantly also from the candidate experience perspective. And look, I don't think that in this early phase, we've covered ourselves in glory in terms of asking all those hard questions and blending those two worlds. I think this is going to be one of those issues where some good ideas, some good concepts are going to shake themselves out, and those concepts typically are around where a technology can reduce friction, increase a very natural attraction, and very gently pull people into their gravitational beams and orbits, and basically start to treat the human beings from a candidate perspective like special people, and very gently and without spamming them, start to really kind of inculcate them into the organization. And then on the kind of user end, whatever makes a TA professional or an HR professional's life easier by basically helping to kind of automate the organization process, the structuring process, the delivery and communication and scheduling processes in a way that is not cumbersome, that is not hard to set up, that again is very natural and very frictionless, is really where the magic happens. I'll be honest with you. I think in the whole field of TA tools out there at the moment, there
Yeah.
are simply a handful that come anywhere close to probably doing that well.
Yeah, and that's very crucial for you, for us to hear that as well, because there is an absolute chaos in terms of what is out there when it comes to technology, HR technology, TA technology, things merging in between, and really, really confusing. I think the internal buyers who mostly don't have time to attend all of these things, and sort of understand what innovation or what technology is going out. But with the same merit, I also have a concern that the HR's position is almost as if, and TA as well, is almost as if they feel obliged to go ahead and get a technology on board without actually looking internally and seeing if the current tech stack they have are adopted and utilized sufficiently, the processes are efficient. But there is this rush of going out and buying technology and then trying to make it work, and almost sometimes not make it work. So why is this happening? Is there some sort of competition between TA folks that, oh, XYZ bought this, so I must buy this, but let's look at it internally in terms of what's needed is sort of missing?
I think, listen, there's a lot of buzz out there, and a lot of excitement around things that are coming up. And part of that, well, so much of that is due to good marketing, and then referential, kind of viral network effect.
Yeah.
And people get very buzzy about, have you heard about this new thing? And oh my God, you got to go try this out and so forth. And frankly, look, if you are serious about buying some important technology, especially technology that frankly offers a first impression of your organization from an employer branding perspective, do not listen to the hype. What you want to do instead is to speak to people who have had this technology on board for 2 years, and talk to them about how it is actually creating a generative effect. It is reducing cost, it's reducing risk, it's increasing all of the proper metrics in terms of attraction and time to hire, and full service engagement and all that kind of stuff. Look, it's in the metrics, and you have to start measuring this stuff with as much scientific rigor as you possibly can do, and start just ignore the marketing hype and all the buzz and so forth. Yeah, you get yourself in a danger there. This is like any good software purchasing and buying experience. You really have to examine what business problem and what human problem are you trying to resolve. And then basically literally put that information down on paper and then say, what would a perfect world look like in terms of that resolution? And then you basically measure up every other, kind of software anecdote, every possible, tool that you see come on the market has basically to line up to that ideal. And then you rate them on some kind of a very basic numeric scale, like a 1 to 5 scale, 5 being absolutely perfect and 1 being completely insufficient. And that basically is the way you need to kind of go about, I think, solving for those things. Otherwise, you get pulled here, there, and everywhere. And before you know it, you're into a sales conversation and they're talking about 2-year and 3-year discounts and bada boom, bada bing, we're going to send you something special. Don't you worry, you're going to love this, and you're buying stuff you don't even need. So I think that's the way to really think about it.
Absolutely. I find that in most of our conversations in-house, as well as with tech vendors, is that businesses are still very concerned about employer branding and employee referral schemes and all sorts of things that are still quite traditional in how we used to, even recruit 10 years ago. So I'm starting to see that businesses are still not ready to take that next step for their total workforce, so contingent included. What is your advice on that, or your sort of insight on that? Because my experience has been that businesses are still very happy, especially HR and TA, to completely sort of keep that at an arm's length. What do you think will be the state of TA as this continues?
It's an excellent question. I guess, when I think about the talent acquisition life cycle, and I think about, sort of what excellent looks like in that space, it should look and feel a lot like what my most recent experience was, basically coming to this company I'm working with right now, called Oxford Nanoimaging, which is randomly, at least in terms of my career, a fluorescent microscopy super resolution startup last place, honestly, I think I ever thought I would have landed, but it was the
Sounds
fact.
very intelligent to me.
It does. Yeah, I know. It sounds very, very fancy, right? But importantly, very much out of character for the rest of my employment experiences. And it was basically through LinkedIn,
Hmm.
ultimately, that the founder and CEO had reached out to me and found me and all of the sort of incumbent cross connections that he's been looking for, that kind of make up the persona that he thinks does extraordinarily well within his very rarefied company,
Yeah.
in terms of people's love for biology, people's interest in technology, and people's kind of drive to kind of go and create things. He put all that stuff together, and somehow basically built himself a global map of people, and he does this over and over again, and then reaches out personally to people and says, hey, come and listen to this. I think you're really going to like it. I mean, that is such a powerful, kind of moment. I literally dropped my consultancy and went running to be part of this, because it
Wow.
was such a convincing, kind of thing. And literally in a week's time, I had a job offer and I was starting the following Monday. And that's, look, that's sort of like the dream, kind of the dream landscape. If you can get tools that basically touch people in a very personal way, in a very kind way, in a way that says, you need to listen to this because this is about to be life-changing for you.
Yeah.
Here's why we think so. And come be part of our tribe. Wow. I mean, that's kind of what you want to solve for. And so the more holistic and the more joined up and at the
Yeah.
same time, elegantly simplistic with possibly a lot of good, strong functionality underneath is
Yeah.
really kind of what it is. That's sort of like the holy grail.
Absolutely. And from everything you just said, it feels that you've had a very hybrid career in a way. So you've been a CIO, in my opinion, who looks at different sort of techs as well and brings those sorts of innovation back into HR teams and TA teams. And yet at the same time, you are not a typical CIO, CTO, right? So this sort of almost begs to ask, the community, the HR and TA leaders community back, is there now a new breed of individual emerging who sits between business and TA to do exactly what you're doing, is bring in the best technologies, but best processes and learning experiences, and helps those businesses with all this ongoing noise about AI. We all need AI. Well, there is no AI in HR. And
Right.
I don't know why we don't boldly say that. So do you think there is a new breed of specialty or skill set coming out now into businesses, or is needed?
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. I think there's sort of a requirement of us all to start getting savvy about the business problems that, again, we're trying to solve for. And I don't say that lightly. So I'm not talking about the HR problems you're trying to solve for, whereby you get yelled at every month for not filling the requisite number of open positions and blah, blah, blah. That's a trivial challenge. The bigger challenge is, how is business being impacted by not having these critical people? How can business be positively impacted by kind of like foretelling, who it is
Yeah.
you need to line up? And then how do you do things like talent map for those types of roles well in advance of those requirements coming on board? How do you basically start building an organization as if you were the navigator on a submarine with no windows, right? And basically, you're dealing with all these different functions on the boat, all of which rely on you to basically come up with the right directional components to say, this is where we need to turn, here's where we need to go up, however many, kind of meters, and here's where we need to dive, and all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
That really should be the job of the HR folks. And that requires, I think, a combination hybrid knowledge set, which simply is, and this is not daunting, guys, this is dead easy. This is crap that you can learn on Google. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is how businesses run, and basically how a CFO thinks, then how technology basically can potentially go help enhance that. And that's how a CTO or a CIO thinks. And then basically how the people component of that comes together to ensure that you have the right people in the right place at the right time to basically go and execute against the right business strategy. And that is all about core competence and capability, right, at the end of the day. And that's very much sort of the CRO, or what is it nowadays? Chief People Officer, CPO. So you have to, I think any good, strong exec needs to have those three elements incorporated in their thinking. And if you're just thinking in a silo, then you don't get it. And it's important. And by the way, none of this is hard. Like I said, there are steady, easy formulas for each one of those things to kind of understand how the business challenges intersect with the technology enablement, which then intersect with the people requirement. And that can all come together quite neatly.
Absolutely. You say it so neatly, it sounds so easy, but in reality.
I know.
In reality and in practice.
Here's another, okay, you're absolutely right, Bhumi. Here's another way to think about it. Go make friends with your head of finance, right?
Yeah.
And go make friends with your CIO and CTO. Go together into a room and drink way too much coffee. And then you spell out, here are the people challenges and risks that I think the company is facing. Can you guys figure out how to help me together, to come up with the right approach on this thing? And then basically just create a cross-functional process. You don't need to know all the different ins and outs, but you definitely need to work cross-functionally on that challenge.
I agree. And I completely feel you there, because I am of that approach. We collaborate consistently with not only other technologies, but also with people. So that's so important. That leads me to my final question. I promise you that'll be the final question.
That's all right.
Because there's so much I can talk to you about. So I'll keep it to the last one, which is there are certain TA and HR leaders who are aware of this, who are making and driving huge changes within their businesses. Yet there is something about the complexity of certain changes that they will do parts and parcels of it, especially for a large organization. So it then becomes a long 2-3 year program. As an example, let's say, launching a new HR system that then affects the TA team as well as affects the entire business. But then that becomes a part and parcel in a smaller sort of 2-year program run in different steps. For people that are taking that approach, firstly, do you think that's the right approach? And secondly, if you agree or disagree, why?
Whew, that's a tough one. Look, no, I think 2 years to do anything, frankly, is possibly very dangerous. And I think that basically screams you're not probably ready for what's happening in this world in terms of the speed of change and complexity. 2 years is a lifetime. I mean, 2 years basically, in my view, is sort of the equivalent of 10-year planning used to look like. If you can guess what's going to happen in 2 years, then you're probably a god, I would imagine. I think basically people need to, once you have done the maths up front and you've figured out what business problems you're going to solve for, and you've picked what you think is the best possible solution to go tick all those boxes, or as many as required. And then you now have the sign off and you've paid for your license and you're ready to rock and roll with it. I think what you need to embrace at that moment is sort of a sprint-based agile process. I know that sounds like just all sorts of fancy, fashionable speak. It's not. Companies all over the place basically have adopted agile working, and all that simply means is that you're going to work on this project and give it a particular level of priority. You're going to create a cross-functional team to go and deliver it, and you're going to deliver it in small increments and in pilot-driven chunks so that you can prove and test the actual solution in a controlled space with a group of people who will feed back to you constantly how that process is going, so that every 2 weeks you can course correct through sort of a retrospective and just say, how did the last 2 weeks go? You can course correct by gathering data in real time and then basically go fix it for the next 2 weeks. And you go and deliver the whole kit and caboodle literally in somewhere between 3 and 4 months. That would be the max, frankly, I think something should take. But involve the right people up front. It's just like, listen, it's like cooking great Chinese food, isn't it, at home? It all comes down to preparation. That's the thing about it, right? Because you got this blazing hot wok, and then you've got like 15 different ingredients, and you've measured everything out, and you've got them all lined up in little bowls, and it's beautiful. And then it all just comes together, boom, 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 and it stir, 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 and bang. Suddenly you have this gorgeous meal. That's really what this process, I think, is all about too. Buy the right system in the first instance, and then align a cross-functional team to an agile process, and then basically start to iterate and deliver over and over again every 2 weeks, and then check every morning together what it is you're going to go get done, and then wrap up at the end of every 2 weeks saying, what did we get done, what worked, what didn't work, how do we course correct on to the next 2 weeks. And that's basically how you go and deliver this stuff. It's the only way to do it, and it's the only way to kind of maintain the momentum. key, basically, to really kind of have success with these things, I think.
And I think it's about not doing too much at the same time, right? Because it's not distracting the key focus groups in multiple different directions, because sometimes they're going to implement an HR system at the same time as the analytics dashboard, at the same time as the TA tool, and it's just complicated, and then they get it wrong. So I think it's very important to prioritize instead of, because I've seen, and I still see in a lot of businesses, that they have multiple projects going on at the same time and they divide them into different streams. And whilst that may be useful, I think there is another school of thought that is like, let's pick one, get it right, and then pick the other one. But maybe I'm just thinking too simplistic.
No, you're not. Here's why that's important, is that you want to be able to measure the success of each one of those things. And any good scientist will tell you that if you throw in too many experiments that are happening simultaneously and you introduce too many variables into each of those experiments at the same time, you are guaranteed chaos. You are guaranteed an outcome that you can't predict. And that's not basically what the science of great, human process delivery is all about. So definitely stick with one experiment, test, make sure it's right, move on to the next. That's the way. It's the way to do it well.
Thank you so much, Jeff. There is so much more I could ask you, but I'm mindful of your time as well. So thank you very much. And to everyone that's listening and watching this, I hope you enjoyed. We may potentially get in one more before Christmas, but if we don't, then we'll see you in the new year. In order to follow Interim Market, all the links are in the description. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.